Imagine a time when a foreign empire had marched into your homeland. They had taken your king. They had humiliated your chiefs. They had occupied your capital. And now, they wanted the one thing your people considered sacred. The Golden Stool. But there was one thing the British did not understand. They were not dealing with a people who had forgotten how to fight. And they certainly had not counted on her. Her name was Yaa Asantewaa. A queen mother. A farmer. A woman who had watched her people suffer in silence. Until one day, she could remain silent no longer. Yaa Asantewaa helped mobilize the Ashanti resistance. The objective was clear. Defend the Golden Stool. The Ashanti surrounded the British fort at Kumasi, where British officials and soldiers had taken refuge. The resistance became known as the War of the Golden Stool, or the Yaa Asantewaa War. And suddenly, the British found themselves trapped. They had underestimated the Ashanti. They had underestimated their determination. And most importantly, they had underestimated the woman leading them. Yaa Asantewaa became the face of the rebellion. She inspired warriors. She encouraged resistance. She helped coordinate the struggle against a vastly better equipped colonial power. But Britain was not going to surrender easily. The British responded with overwhelming force. They brought more soldiers. More weapons. More ammunition. And slowly, the balance began to shift. The Ashanti fought fiercely. But courage could not completely compensate for the enormous military advantage of the British. Villages were attacked. Resistance networks were crushed. Ashanti leaders were hunted. And eventually, Yaa Asantewaa was captured. The woman who had stood before powerful chiefs and demanded courage was now a prisoner. The British sent Yaa Asantewaa into exile in the Seychelles. Far from her homeland. Far from Ejisu. Far from the people she had fought to defend. She would never return to Ashanti soil. She died in exile in 1921. Think about that for a moment. She had fought for her homeland. She had risked everything. She had watched her kingdom struggle against one of the most powerful empires on earth. And she died thousands of kilometers away from home. But the British had made one terrible mistake. They believed that by capturing Yaa Asantewaa, they could capture her legacy, but they could not. Yaa Asantewaa did not defeat the British Empire militarily. That is not the story. The real story is something deeper. She refused to accept that defeat meant surrendering the soul of her people. She stood at a moment when fear could have silenced everyone. And she spoke. She reminded her people that courage was not the absence of fear. Courage was standing up despite the fear. The Golden Stool was never surrendered to the British. And Yaa Asantewaa became one of the most enduring symbols of African resistance to colonial rule. Today, her name lives far beyond Ejisu. Schools bear her name. Institutions remember her. Her story is taught as a symbol of courage, leadership, and resistance. But perhaps the most powerful part of her story is this. She was not waiting for someone else to save her people. When the moment came, she stood. When others hesitated, she spoke. When an empire threatened her homeland, she fought. And when history called her name, Yaa Asantewaa answered. History has recorded the names of kings. It has recorded the names of generals. It has recorded the names of emperors who conquered nations. But sometimes, the most powerful figure in a nation's darkest hour is not a king. It is a woman. A woman who refuses to surrender. A woman who looks at an empire and says, "You may take our land, but you will not take our soul." Her name was Yaa Asantewaa. Queen Mother of Ejisu. Warrior. Leader. Symbol of resistance. And one of Africa's most unforgettable women. Remember her name. Yaa Asantewaa. Because sometimes one woman's courage is enough to make an empire tremble. But Yaa Asantewaa's story is only one battle in Africa's forgotten history. There were kings who refused to surrender. Warriors who fought against impossible odds. Empires that rose to greatness. And wars that changed the destiny of entire nations. Some of these stories were buried by time. Others were never told from the African side. But we are bringing them back. If you want to uncover the battles, warriors, kingdoms and forgotten conflicts that shaped Africa, subscribe to The Chronicles of African Wars. Because here, we don't just tell you about African wars. We take you onto the battlefield. Subscribe now, and discover the African history they never wanted you to forget. The Chronicles of African Wars. Where every battle has a story.